Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast. BrightWord is a leading platform for diverse storytelling, where voices from all backgrounds can share their unique narratives and connect with readers from around the world. Follow our regular podcast updates, where we strive to foster a literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast. I'm John Lobb, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Robert Janicki, author of Looking Back, the experiences of a young Marine who served in Vietnam as an infantry squad leader with the 3rd Marines from September 1967 through October 68 during the infamous Tet Offensive. One of the reviewers of the book made the point of saying that they learned more about that war in this book than they ever did in school. A very impressive book indeed, Robert. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, John. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. That time frame that we're talking about, 67 to 68, obviously a key point in history of the Vietnam conflict. What drove you to, at this point in your life, to look back at those years and to write about them at this point?
Well, actually, I started writing the book around 40 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it took a very long time to write. I personally published it through Lulu in 2013 with no publicity. I just put the book out there. And it took me between 30 and 35 years to write.
Wow. And was that because it was difficult to address the subject matter?
Well, it starts very lighthearted. I'm talking about the cover photo that's on the front of the book. There's 4 Marines sitting on the ground. And that picture is the most cherished picture of my time in Vietnam. And it was just 4 of us. And it's always been on my living room wall. And they just kept, not haunting, but I'm looking at them. And this is literally how it worked out. I felt like they were looking back at me. And that's how I came up with the title, Looking Back.
Well, I wanted to say before we go any further, thank you for your service, Robert. We all are indebted to you and to all the Marines that served in the war.
It was my honor.
Looking at the title, Looking Back, March 9th, 68, what is the significance of March 9th, 1968 to you?
That's when that picture was taken. And that was the whole driving force for the book to be started. And on that day, I was a squad leader of 3 men. 2 days earlier, in a very bad battle, I was a rifleman in a squad of 8. So we lost over half of our squad, just our squad alone. So the 4 of us sitting on the ground, 3 out of the 4 were wounded. And it's just a very memorable picture for me to keep.
Absolutely. They say that you come home from the war, but the war never really leaves you. Is that true? I mean, the war obviously had a big impact on your life ever since.
Yeah. I can pretty much say with very, very strong confidence, because I've worked as a veterans advocate for my entire life after the war. That anybody that goes off to a conflict, whether going back in history to all of our wars, you come back a changed person. You can't go into anything like this and not come out a different person. Different responsibilities, different outlook on life, different priorities. That's across the board. Branch of service, anybody that's put into harm's way, they feel it very.
Absolutely. Just incredible. The act of writing the memoir, you must have known that it was going to dredge up some intense memories and emotions. Were you prepared for that? Were you fearful about thinking back? Maybe there were things that you would remember you would rather not remember?
Yeah, I'm sure all of that is true. Going into it, I was pretty naive. And in the beginning of the book, it's literally you're walking in my footsteps for 13 months. And we're always out in the jungles or the rice paddies. And it starts off very light. And, some of the stuff I'm talking about is extremely comical in a military sense. But definitely as time went on and I started talking about, a good example, that battle, when I started writing about that battle that picture was taken from, I couldn't write for 3 or 4 years. It just destroyed me. my life fell apart for a very long time.
Have you kept in touch with the others in that photo? Just curious about that.
I know they all came home from the war. Their name is not up on the memorial.
Good, good.
In 2014, I think, that there's a Mexican, the second one from the left. He actually contacted me, and we've been in touch with each other ever since. And I found, I think, 5 other men from my squad or my platoon that we keep in touch with.
Excellent, excellent. A special bond indeed between you guys.
Definitely.
It's been said sometimes that books and Hollywood especially tend to glamorize war when you think back to the John Wayne movies and the battle scenes. How does that compare with your reality of being on the ground for those 13 months?
Well, Vietnam was the first guerrilla war for the United States. And so the chemistry was completely different. There was no front lines, no really big battles. It wasn't like the Iwo Jima or any of that. They were the majority, other than the Tet Offensive and Saigon and a place called Mudder's Ridge, Hamburger Hill, Khe Sanh. Those were big battles, and they went on for months. But for us little guys, for the most part, we were out in the rice paddies or the jungles for 13 months. There's, again, no front lines, so every night when you set in, it was a 360-degree perimeter. Everybody facing out, pitch dark, couldn't smoke, you couldn't talk. Our goal was to be invisible that night. And that's what you had to be, because if you messed up, you're toast.
Wow. How could you ever sleep in a situation like that? I mean, I can't imagine.
I'm glad you asked that question, because during the night, there's just 2 of you in a foxhole. And until a certain hour in the evening and also in the morning, it's 100% alert, because that's when they normally like to attack. But at night, again, you're mentally and physically exhausted. At night, when it's your turn for a 2-hour break, your body, your mind never stops. It's listening to every tiny sound. Your body is getting some physical rest, but your mind is just under consciousness. It's just, a good example. Every night when your whole mate is, instead of touching you, because that would be a shock, it was the slightest whisper, and you're wide awake. So that was an excellent question. Nobody's ever asked me that question, but nights over there were very, very tough.
I can only imagine. Wow. And unless you've gone through that, you can't know, you can't understand fully what must be involved with that. So the Tet Offensive, obviously when we speak of the war, there's always mention of the Tet Offensive. How did that impact your unit and you personally?
Well, when the Tet Offensive started, I was in a base camp called Quang Tri, which is the headquarters base for our unit. And Hue, well, the Tet Offensive was Hue, Saigon, all over the country, but Hue was right up the road from us. And it was a real bad mess. And our unit was dispatched to go out and be a blocking force between Hue and North Vietnam, where they had all their supplies and their infantry soldiers coming down. So Tet Offensive, as bad as it was, I'm just talking about the NVA soldiers, and that's all we ever fought with, the uniformed NVA soldiers. They eventually got decimated in Hue. They broke up into, actually a very worse thing, they broke up into all these cells of good numbers of men. And for the rest of my time in Vietnam, this is starting on, I think it was January 28th was Tet, until I came home in October, we're chasing all these cells down. And they really knew how to fight. They were very good soldiers.
For folks like me, civilians, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions that Americans have about the war and those who served as compared to the reality?
We came, as most people know, if anybody has been shared any history of Vietnam, it's not just the war, it was the culture that we came home to, which was extremely negative. And I can remember when I first got home, I was back in Connecticut, every day, or quite often on the news, whether it be the radio or the TV, they would say another crazed Vietnam veteran robbed a store or shot somebody. A day or two later, they cleared up the reality of the story, but it really tainted who we were. And because of all that, none of us could ever talk about Vietnam. We couldn't talk about it because just got, everybody just came down on us very hard. So we all eventually got married, had kids, started a family. We all got jobs. You could have 3 Vietnam veterans sitting side by side in an office. They never knew that they were in Vietnam because you didn't dare say it. We didn't even put that we had military service when we were applying for a job. It was very horrible, and all of our pride that was just burst. We just wanted to burst with our pride. We couldn't share a word of it.
Wow. And they say that talking is one of the best methods of therapy, to not be able to talk things out, to have to keep it inside. What a double whammy. I mean, what a horrible experience to have to go through.
That was, well, again, myself and many, many, many people like us, we didn't want to admit that Vietnam really messed us up. But my sister and my former wife, they lived with me. They lived with my personality and my issues. So fortunately, in 1979, started the Vietnam Veterans Outreach Center. And I joined. And I was there from 79 to 85. And it was just a group of 7 of us. We were all combat veterans, so we didn't have to worry about, stepping on toes or saying something that's going to offend somebody somehow. And it just kept evolving that way. And I stayed there for 6 years, sorry. And I realized that exactly what you just said. The fact that I was able to talk with them and share my feelings without being insulted or criticized. I worked for the phone company in Connecticut back at the time. We were a very small company. In 1985, which is the 10-year anniversary of the downfall of Saigon, I wrote a newsletter. I wrote an article in our weekly newspaper for the phone company, and just asking if somebody would like to get together. So I was going to send newsletters out every month. And I said, just tell me your name, what branch of service you're in, what building you're in, what your building mailing code is. And as time went on, at the end of every newsletter, I had like 8 or 9 pages by building of who the veterans were in the building. And they all started reaching out to each other. And we started having Veterans Day events, Memorial Day events with all the CEOs.
Wonderful.
For me, it was very cathartic. It was, again, I'm blessed, and I've been in some very good places at the very proper time. But looking back at that to me is very, very satisfying.
Wow. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
What a blessing for the guys that you were allowed to finally say, there's someone else like me. There's someone who understands what I've been through.
Exactly.
What a blessing for that group of people.
We even had our own counselors in our company, and we had the VA counselors come in and train them on what to look for, what to listen for. Because it wasn't just veterans that we had in our company; we had their wives, and so a wife could be saying, "I have an issue at home," and she starts describing the issue at home. Turns out her husband's a veteran, and we could get that. We directed definitely personalized help for all those folks.
Wonderful. And thinking about the people who were here at home waiting for you, waiting for all the guys, wives and girlfriends and parents, they can't possibly understand either. And it's not because they don't love the guys, but how can they understand what you've been through, right?
Can't. And again, every war has its own chemistry. Ours, I think, was we had no base camp. We had no place to go. We had no hot food. We ate sea rations every day. Plus, we lived with either you're in a foxhole during the day, protecting the perimeter, you're out on an observation post with another Marine with a radio, or you were on a patrol. At night, you were either in your foxhole, you're out on a listening post with another Marine and radio, about 50, 60 meters out in front of the perimeter, or you were on a nighttime ambush. So there was absolutely no downtime. And nobody can relate. How can you expect anybody to relate?
In putting the book together, I know it took years and years, but were there certain details that you felt were important to include and then other details that you chose not to include for whatever reason?
Well, what I tried to do with the book, and I think I did a pretty good job, because going back to your conversation about the big battles from previous wars and how to relate to that, I only took my story to a certain level. There's only no, actually two elements. In the middle of my tour, where I shared something that was pretty bad, and my last 2 months in Vietnam, which was the worst battle of my entire 13 months. There's some descriptions of those events, but again, they don't go into any gore, nothing that somebody can't digest without getting sick. So it's, again, if you read friends of mine, they've read it 7 times. There's another lady that she's on her third, and now interesting, her husband's a Army Vietnam veteran. He can't read the book. She's reading it for the 3rd time. So, it's the way I think the way I write it, it almost drags you into the story, because you're literally with me, and I'm talking to my Marine buddies, and some comical things happen and some very bad things happen, but we just we suck it up and we try to make a joke out of something bad, but you got to try to keep it lighthearted. People have been reading it time and time again.
Absolutely. And that never occurred to me before, that you might have to make a decision that certain details or certain descriptions, your readers could not handle it.
And a good example of that. Now, my son definitely read it right away. My daughter, who ironically worked for the VA for 20-something years, dealing with people like her father, she hasn't read it yet. And she said, how can I read a book where the main character is my father? She might have read it by now, but the last time I chatted with her, she hadn't.
Wow. And yet I can understand where she's coming from.
Definitely.
It makes sense. It
Yeah.
makes sense. Who would you hope your most important audience would be, Robert? Would it be other veterans, or would it be civilians who need to understand better what the guys went through?
Well, there's a bunch of categories. One big category is all the kids that their father was in Vietnam. There's nothing in history. This war was not taught in any schools. And these kids, my son's very proud of me, but a lot of kids out there, my son's age, in the late 40s, they had dads, and their dads never talk about it. A lot of people my age, a big category of Vietnam veterans. That's why we changed the jacket of the book to contain the Vietnamese flag and the 3 standard medals that every Vietnam veteran got. They devour it because, again, going back to talking, I'm talking for them. Everybody had a different story. I mean, you could be in a battle, laying side by side in a battle, and you sit down and you describe the battle differently. But we all have our own stories. The other part that really surprised me are the people that protested the war, and now they feel guilty. So they're trying to absorb. I don't know how they're trying to resolve their but they're reading it.
Interesting. And maybe they had certain feelings in 68, 67, 75 when the guys were all heading home, and certain attitude about what happened there and what these guys were like, and have come to realize, maybe with a little bit more life experience, that they were being pretty harsh and being pretty unfair.
They were. It's just an aside. When I actually landed in California on my way home, the Marines there, they suggested that you might want to change into civilian clothes. I didn't listen. And so I get to LAX on my way, flight back to JFK, and I'm walking into the terminal with my sea bag over my shoulder, and I get punched out by a protester. So those are the people that hopefully will read either my story or somebody else's story about Vietnam and just feel a little bit guilty about what they did to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. After what you were trying to do, serving your country. Wow.
Correct.
Was this the one book that was inside you, Robert, or have you thought about writing additional books?
Everybody wants me to write the sequel, which is Coming Home and My Life After That. And I have a few pages of stuff I've already written, but honestly, that chapter hurts even more than what I did in the war. And I haven't gotten very far.
Understandable. Understandable. Well, I'm sure there'd be a lot of interest if you do decide to pursue it and you're able to do it. I'm sure there'd be a lot of interest on the part of our viewers, and I hope you'll come back and speak to us again if in fact you do pen the new book.
I will, definitely.
Wonderful. Robert, our time is running down, but before I let you go, is there maybe one thing, just one message that you'd like to share for anyone who's considering getting the book, which I'm assuming is available on Amazon and everywhere fine books are sold?
It's on Amazon currently. It's going to be released. Definitely going to be released by the end of this month. It'll be on Barnes and Noble. It'll be on every electronic book site, but it'll definitely be available by the end of this month. I know Barnes and Noble got my profile and everything today. It's just a matter of how quickly they can get it up into publishing mode, but it'll be by the end of this week. And the jacket, again, my original jacket is just a black cover with a picture on it and some stories. The new jacket is really going. If a Vietnam veteran sees the jacket of this book, he's definitely going to be intrigued by just the pictures that are on the cover of the book.
Excellent.
Possibly, I'll definitely come back and talk to you anytime. But if I do decide to go forward with the sequel, I'll definitely let you know.
Wonderful. And what would be your one message for those thinking of picking up Looking Back today?
If you're interested in finding out what it was like, now my story is just the eyes of a Marine infantry person. There was, Army, there was Navy, there was Air Force, so everybody has their own category. But if you want any kind of inkling of what we as individuals did, not only for yourselves but for your friends, that you had to stick together to survive, and even then it didn't work sometimes. If you want to learn anything about what that war was at the real nitty-gritty level, I would recommend you that.
Robert, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And I know there'll be a lot of interest. The book is called Looking Back, and our author today has been Robert Janicki. Again, thank you, sir, for being with us, and thank you for your service to our country.
It was my honor, and thank you, John.
Absolutely. And we'll see all of you on the next episode of the BrightWord Books Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. You've been listening to the BrightWord Books Podcast, home of the literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss future episodes. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.